Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's presentation. Our presentation today is about Windows Virtual Desktop with Azure and user and workspace management. Before I go ahead and introduce our speakers today, I wanted to give you the opportunity to take a look at the agenda, and I'll cover a bit of housekeeping information while you guys get a sneak peek at what we're going to be covering today. So, a bit of housekeeping information is that we will be recording this presentation. So if you logged in late or you wanted to have this information to share with a colleague, we encourage you to do that. We will be sending out a link of the recording to today's presentation via email to anyone that registered. We'll make that available as soon as it's available up on our website, which is normally within a day or so. Out there. So keep an eye on your inboxes for that. We'll also have some links in there for some special offers and some more information in there for you as well. Also, if you have any questions or comments for any of our presenters today, please feel free to direct them via the question or chat functionality, and we'll do our best to get to everybody's questions as time allows after the event. In the case that we run out of time, we'll make sure we follow up with everyone with their questions. So with that being said, let's go ahead and introduce our presenters today. So our main presenter today is Symon Perriman. He's has a great background in the Microsoft community. He is a Microsoft MVP. He has decades of experience, well, at least 10 plus years into the cloud computing industry, and he also is a great author, influencer, and speaker. So that's why we invited him today to join us today. And he's also joined by our very own Jason Smith and Robert Corradini from Liquidware, who are going to go ahead and help bring this all together into one package and begin the presentation. So Symon, do you want to go ahead and take it away?
Thank you for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Before we actually I dive into this, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jason, and he's going to give a brief introduction to Liquidware.
Thanks, Simon. So excited to be on this webinar today about Windows WVD and also Liquidware. A little bit about Liquidware before we get started. We were the company began in 2009. However, the flagship solutions, ProfileUnity and Stratusphere, their history goes back just a little before that, actually. So the products are very mature, including FlexApp application layering. The headquarters is in Chicago. We also have an office in Atlanta and offices across Europe and also in Australia, some presence in Asia Pacific. We have very many key alliances. One we're speaking about today, specifically with Microsoft. We also have alliances with Amazon, Citrix, Google, Nutanix, and VMware. So no matter how you deliver Windows, we have partnerships with all delivery platform vendors, including if you're delivering physical desktops, and our solution sets work across those. We're sold through a great network of channel partners that are trained to integrate our solutions and can be very consultative, whether you're moving from Windows 7 to 10 or to a platform like WVD or to any other cloud partner platform. We're really the preeminent third-party provider of software that provides adaptive workspaces, reducing the cost and complexity of desktop environments and enabling desktop virtualization to be used even more cost effectively, and also to give a greater user experience if you're moving to a solution set like virtual desktops or perhaps a brand new desktop running Windows 10 even on physical desktops. Overall, our solutions can help you realize a great return on investment and can lower your total cost of ownership of managing not only your Windows software and operating systems, but the way that users use them and the way that you manage them. Next slide. Just a few of our customers, well known in the industry. We have customers across every type of geographical region and also across all verticals, including, as you see here, education customers at higher education. We also have K through 12 education. We have very many financial institutions, insurance, technology companies, all across the board. And we're in use by many departments of the federal government, including, as you see here, the U.S. Army, and telecommunications companies, such as the ones mentioned here, and also Frontier Communications and AT&T.
among others. So you may see a company that's very closely related to the industry that you're in or that you integrate solutions into, and you'll know you're in good hands with Liquidware.
All right, thank you for that introduction. We're now going to talk a little bit about desktop virtualization with cloud computing. Now, many of you have probably been using VDI for a while, probably been doing it on premise. And what we had heard from a lot of customers is there's just a lot of challenges with having to manage that infrastructure. You know, maybe you're a small company and you don't want to set up the whole remote desktop infrastructure and send people to servers because they need Windows clients. Maybe you need to try to take advantage of the cloud because you only have a single site and you want to be able to have high availability and disaster recovery. You know, a lot of organizations now have to dedicate an entire cluster just towards VDI because of some of the types of traffic patterns that they see. When people are starting those VMs, logging into their sessions, there's massive spikes which are happening on the hardware. So a lot of organizations won't put their production services like their SQL database or their line of business applications on those same clusters or those same hosts as their VDI solution. So running VDI on-premise, you know, it can be expensive. And this is really why Microsoft's been looking at a better approach. How do we enable customers to take advantage of VDI and all its benefits, but also be able to come up with a more cost-effective solution? Now, VDI, as you may know, very common if you're working in a remote site or have task workers. Sometimes you need VDI for the opposite, power users who need to have access to high-end infrastructure for things like graphic design, computer-aided design, or different types of high-end computing. There's also a lot of industries that have compliance needs which force end users to have to use VDI so that all types of data and communication stay within the private network and the end users are just connecting with a thin client. So with all of these challenges in mind, Microsoft has recently announced that they're going to be coming out with a new Windows 10 SKU known as Windows 10 Enterprise for remote sessions. And what this basically does is it allows currently up to 10 simultaneous user sessions connecting to a single virtual machine running Windows 10 Enterprise. So again, a lot of people ask, well, you know, really, do we, what's the huge benefit with that? Why can't I just use traditional remote desktop and Windows Server? Well, keep in mind, if you're trying to connect to Windows Server through remote desktop, sometimes you're still limited with the number of connections. But in many cases, a lot of your users might not be able to go and connect to a Windows server and will require Windows client for multi-user connections because they have those graphic needs. Now, one of the pieces of feedback that we also hear is, well, you know what? I'm still able to go and install the full desktop experience on Windows Server. Why wouldn't I just use that instead of going over to Windows 10? Well, the big challenge with using the desktop experience on Windows Server is that it's only part of their long-term servicing track. If you want to have regular updates for your enterprise, you want to go on the fast servicing track, you won't be able to use Windows Server with the desktop experience. That's just not available. So basically, as you kind of look at all of these different challenges the customers are asking for, the needs, wanting to be in the fast servicing track, needing that full desktop experience, Microsoft had to come up with a better solution. And this is what Windows 10 Enterprise for remote sessions will offer. Now, beyond just offering that multi-user connection for their end users, they've really spent a lot of time enhancing the Office 365 experience. Now, they specifically focused on the Pro Plus SKU, and that basically means that it includes all of the core Windows, Office, regular components you would be used to, Word, Excel, but it also includes some of the business applications as well, like Skype for Business. And what they've really tried to do is just optimize the delivery, the packaging, making sure that Office 365 and all of its applications work as a first-class experience. Now with Windows 7, they're continuing to extend the security, keep that patched. So they want to make sure that Windows 7 can still be used as a virtual desktop. And as they've been building this, scalability has been key. Now, as we mentioned, this is not live yet. The public preview will be coming out soon. And based on the early testing data, it's supporting 10 concurrent connections. But it is very possible that Microsoft will increase those numbers as we actually reach the public release. One of the other things that I've seen Microsoft do, which has been particularly interesting, is they've really tried to embrace the partner community with this release, building up the ecosystem. And that's really a great example of where Liquidware fits in. Microsoft's built the core infrastructure, but there's still some areas that could be improved. And Liquidware is really trying to build those solutions to help make it easier to assess the environment, help you migrate from maybe your on-premise to Azure, and then also operate at scale. Now, this whole technology has been called Windows Virtual Desktop with Microsoft Azure. Now, on the technical side, what it's really done is allowed all of these connections to run efficiently and effectively. Security is always one of the biggest issues when you're looking at VDI, especially when someone else is storing your data. So it's fully integrated with all of the Microsoft identity solutions, including Azure Active Directory. Now, it also has a feature known as Reverse Connect. And what this means is none of your end users have to actually go and open inbound ports. Everything goes outbound from the end user. So what this means is it really does help provide that isolated environment. There's, of course, the multi-tenancy benefits, allowing many users to be condensed onto that single infrastructure. And once again, you're going to see the rich partner ecosystem that's being developed. Now, Microsoft really kind of set 3 core goals as part of building this Windows Virtual Desktop environment. First, we need to protect and provide a great solution for the users. Second, for the applications. And then third, we need to make sure that we provide the IT department with a great way to view and monitor this environment. So when you really think about the users, it's all about getting a consistent experience. From the end user's perspective, they don't want to care about the technology. They want it to be invisible, transparent. They just want to make sure their services and profiles and data is available when they log in, when they need it. From the application perspective, we want to make sure that the applications function fast. And again, it should be seamless to the end user. The end user shouldn't know whether it's installed locally on their machine or whether they're actually connecting remotely and streaming that application. But across both the user access and the application access, you of course need to make sure you have great security. And that's built in with application rights management, just-in-time application access, and even the ability to whitelist and blacklist specific applications from being used. But if you're managing dozens or even hundreds of these VDI environments, you want to make sure that you can centrally view this whole ecosystem. Understand not just how the infrastructure is performing, but also the end user experience for each of your clients, making sure that they're getting the experience that they would expect. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jason, and he's going to talk about how Liquidware has provided a solution that really addresses all of these key issues.
Thanks, Simon. Yes, we've been working with Microsoft for over a year as they were headed towards the release or to the public preview coming soon of WVD, and been a part of that partner community to help ensure that our solution sets work across there. We're in the business of providing adaptive workspace management. Therefore, we support Windows no matter how you deliver it, no matter what delivery platform. So if you're on Citrix today or on VMware today or physical desktops today for your users, we support all those scenarios. Once users are under management with our adaptive workspace management suite, they can seamlessly flow over to new ways to deliver Windows. Maybe that's more Citrix desktops or VMware desktops or Microsoft WVD as we're speaking about today, or could it be a combination there of both? Our solutions provide full user environment management, application layering, and give you that enhanced visibility in any type of Windows environment. And this becomes crucial when you go to, these solutions become paramount, I should say, when you go to a solution that is hosted, especially in the cloud, because you need increased visibility. You need streamlined ways to manage these systems. And Microsoft WVD, delivering largely non-persistent desktops, full user environment management will be key in delivering WVD desktops. Application layering as well, where applications can be layered on top of base images and applications can follow the user. And likewise, the visibility can also go much deeper and broader because you are now hosting your Windows desktops in the cloud with WVD, and you can see all parts of the enterprise, how they're performing, and how they trend user experience. Our solutions, ProfileUnity, FlexApp, and Stratusphere UX, deliver these adaptive workspace management. They work across, and no matter how you deliver Windows, whether it's virtual, physical, or cloud-based desktops. Now, in the case of WVD, ProfileUnity enhances that experience through solutions that WVD already is embedding, such as FS Logics, to have a profile that will come in with the Windows desktop, and then to be able to get full user environment management when you add ProfileUnity. FlexApp is then used to deliver applications on top of the base image. So you can go with vanilla image desktops, streamline your base image, and deliver FlexApp applications from VHDs that are on the network. And Stratusphere UX can be used to help onboard and scale. And we'll talk about these features a little bit more in the coming slides. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you. So as we kind of look at evaluating WVD on Azure, the first thing that we've got to do is really plan what our environment will look like if we migrate it from on-premise, put it up in Azure. And we want to make sure that we're really assessing that infrastructure, right? We want to say, you know, how many hosts do we need? How effective are they? And that's just one piece, right? I really want to emphasize that, you know, just looking at how many servers or how many remote sessions you need is only one part of the solution. You really have to understand the user experience as well. Understanding what each of the users is consuming, how they're operating, and also keeping in mind that not every single user is going to have the same type of experience. You're going to have, you know, even if they're using the same operations, even if they're both task workers, they might have just different performance profiles based on their own tools, experiences. So keep in mind that you got to treat each of these individually. When you're thinking about designing the infrastructure and the images, you always need to think about the testing, right? And what these tools are going to be able to do is help you understand all of the profiles, documents, the data. It's going to figure out which Azure storage requirements are going to map best for you, give you the best delivery, and help you design the base images. Now, ultimately, the goal of this planning is to make this as efficient as possible, to automate what we can, to eliminate assumptions and use real-world data. And what this will do is really set you up for success. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Jason. He's going to talk a little bit more about the product. And I'm going to actually ask a couple of questions as we go along that we're getting in from the audience. So go ahead, Jason. Hey, Jason, I think you might be muted.
Indeed, the mute button. Stratusphere UX. The UX stands for user experience. So Stratusphere is a purpose-built solution to help assess for your next desktop. Stratusphere is done or is leveraged with integrators in the industry, also end user organizations in the industry, to provide an assessment of desktops to move forward. So it can give you that visibility in an existing desktop infrastructure, no matter how you're delivering Windows today, across all endpoints, users, applications, hosts in your network, which enables you to manage, troubleshoot, and optimize the desktop environment. And if that means planning for your next desktop, in this case, WVD, it is a great solution to be able to do that. You can identify good known candidates to do that, and then looking at the resources that are in use today by running an assessment for anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days, and then you can provide decision support steps moving forward. Largely, it allows you, the product, again, to diagnostically drill down after you go into production. It also aids you in operations and first-tier support. It helps the performance validation and optimization, and it can baseline and onboard users at any time so you can grow and scale those deployments. Simon, should we pause and see if there's questions that have come in we want to address?
Yeah, we actually have a couple already, so I'm going to jump straight into it. So could you maybe talk about how you can actually measure or quantify or look at the trends of that user experience, you know, how the people are actually interacting within their own session?
Yes, we'll do that on one of the next few slides. So go to the next slide, and go ahead and propose the next question too.
Sure. So there's a question here about measuring the metrics around the machine boot and login process.
Oh, great.
Usually that's pretty tough to actually measure, right? Because you get performance spikes, you're loading memory, drivers, etc. Could you maybe touch on how you measure that?
Yes, that's another great question. Let's move on to the next slide, and I have some supporting information on those slides to address those.
Okay, sounds good.
Very timely. So if we look at this diagnostic drill down, what we can actually see, you'll see over on the left-hand side of this screenshot of reports, a user experience score. And you'll see that many of the users may be experiencing an A type of a grade, the green ones, literally green, and then you have yellow, and then you have red, and you can trend analysis across the board, and not only with the user experience score, but then as you look at the metrics across the board here, you'll see the same color codes that I mentioned. And so if you see greens, that's great, or nothing, that's great. But if you start to see things that are yellow or orange or red, you want to pay specific attention to that so you can head off problems before they occur. If you just look at IOPS, for example, where you paused in the middle, Simon, disk IOPS for this particular user, in this case it's a VMware user, are spiking for some reason. And then we can drill down and we can see exactly what's happening. We can actually identify which application may be causing disk IOPS to spike, and then we can allocate more resources, whether it's to a pool of users or to a specific server-based computing environment, no matter how that desktop is delivered. So we can head off problems before they occur. So this just gives you an idea of some of the in-depth metrics that we look at. And as far as desktop and user monitoring goes, we go deeper than anybody, so we can provide that diagnostics to help you find root cause across the board.
And to add to that, this is Rob, and really why UX, why it matters is success is really based on the perception of performance. And if you don't have the proper performance and the proper, understanding what those different user sets are, you're going to fail, right? End result. Go ahead, Jason. I'm sorry.
Exactly. No, that was great value add. And so this is just an example of many different views that you can access within Stratusphere. This is just shows you, just gives you a very glimpse of the power of Stratusphere. Go to the next slide. So
and we had one more question that came in. I don't feel free to address that later, but you just might have a slide on this here. So, as you're capturing all of this data, right, there was a lot of stuff that you inventoried on that last slide. So how can a user go and do any type of automation and take that data and try to automate decisions from it if they have hundreds or thousands of desktops? Do you have any type of API or any way that you can actually access those metrics which you've captured?
We do indeed, both the API for Stratusphere to be able to get that information out. We can integrate it with solutions like ServiceNow and others to where you can have, it works with your workflow of your companies to, again, not only identify root cause analysis, but also to head off requests that may be coming in. Someone identifies and self-identifies themselves as needing a different desktop experience or a faster desktop, or they foresee that they need additional applications on their desktops. We can integrate with solutions such as that. But if we want to automate and take actions, the main action that we can take at this time with Stratusphere may be CPU throttling. But when we couple that power with ProfileUnity and the way that we can tune desktops by modifying registry keys and delivering applications a different way with FlexApp, you get to a very holistic way of delivering desktops. Not only that, but it also gives you a way to performance tune your desktop delivery, which is WVD in this case. Should you enhance your compute, for example, that you're paying for, or should you tune the environment, or maybe make a change to the OS where things would run more smoothly? We can provide you, again, decision support for how to do that.
Excellent. Well, let me turn it back over to you here, and I think we will wrap up on this section shortly.
Right. So another way that Stratusphere can be leveraged is with operations and first tier support, literally providing operations and help desk support for your users. You see another report here that gives you a summary of trending of the latest information. And this is what I was speaking about earlier, where you can start to see trends and analyze those to head off things before they occur. You see one in red specifically here, the CPU queue doesn't look right, and you'll be able to take that information and you can rectify that by making changes in your desktop delivery platform and environment, whether you're allocating new resources or changing that person over to a different pool, or in this case, you might be able to identify an application that's helping either make that spike or to cause that CPU workload to be stressed. Next slide.
Performance validation and optimization is another thing that we can provide. So I spoke about the way that Stratusphere can run in existing desktop environments. So in this case, we're comparing a physical desktop environment in the screen against a virtual desktop environment that's being rolled out. And you'll see that almost in every case, you're able to prove out that the metrics have improved across the board. Average login delay may be a little bit extended here, but the rest of the metrics prove out that the virtual desktop is by far the better experience across this specific group of users. So you're looking at a user count of 28 individuals here, and you can drill down, or you can look at different groups of users. So your power users, you may not have decided to give them a virtual desktop yet with the resources that you have today, but you can, they may be candidates for the future. So your call center might be ideal candidates, and they're going to receive a much better desktop than they did before. Your knowledge workers across the board might also experience that. So you can identify different groups, and you can baseline them against what they have today, and usually that means running Stratusphere for at least 15 to 30 days to monitor that environment and to give us those great metrics over time. And then once you onboard them or a test group of users, a POC or a pilot, to the, in this case, a virtual desktop, you're able to prove that out. Again, giving you decision support for your for what you're about to do with your organization and your users to help them remain the most productive that they can while delivering the best desktop possible. And again, Stratusphere can be used on this fourth tier here to baseline and onboard users. And in this case, you might be thinking about, well, I've now started with a group of virtual desktops. How do I know if there's other users that can be expanded? In other words, grow and expand. So you can run a fitness assessment at any time. And here you, at a glance, are identifying users that may be ideal candidates to move over to this new desktop that you've rolled out. So you can define and measure what you call normal. We have some metrics in there in Stratusphere already, but you can modify those to set as a baseline for user experience across the board. And it really supports this movement from physical desktops to virtual desktops or pure cloud desktops like WVD. It really gives you this user-centric look of performance. And again, we're not specialists in a market of monitoring servers and back-end infrastructure unless it's Windows servers and desktops. And that's where Stratusphere excels beyond all competitors in this space to drill down and give you these granular metrics all the way down to a PID process level, and then to aggregate them to a UX score so you can grow and scale your deployment while ensuring the best desktop ever.
Great. Well, I'm going to take it back now. We'll talk a little bit about some of the migration best practices that you want to think about. Now, when you're doing a migration, you want to do this gradually. While you have the ability with these set of tools to do it all at once, it is always good to kind of iterate, work through individual groups, and test. So you can select specific user groups to do a migration. The migration is fully automated with the goal of having no downtime for those users, giving them a transparent experience. We also have the ability, when you're doing this, make sure that you actually validate these desktops when they've been redeployed. Now, the great thing is using the Liquidware suite of tools, that's not really a manual task you have to do. You're pretty much able to automate everything from the selection, the migration, and then the post-deployment validation as well. And by trying to automate this, not only will you save a lot of time, but you're also going to eliminate the human errors during that process. And it's really going to give you a centralized way to handle this massive VDI infrastructure. Now, the main tool which we're going to talk about in this section here is ProfileUnity. So Jason, what does ProfileUnity do for us?
ProfileUnity adds full user environment management. So, you can manage users through a variety of built-in tools in Windows itself, roaming profiles or group policy preferences. You may have a tool built in from your desktop platform that has a management console for managing profiles, yet another management console for doing something else, for tuning the environment, yet another one for delivering applications. ProfileUnity pulled this all together with one solution, one single management console to deliver full environment management across the board, application management, which includes application rights management, and also privilege elevation, and then policy management. So the solution, we've spoken a lot about Windows migrations, but really what we're talking about is the user migration from one desktop to the next. Once you have the new desktop environment ready, the base image and the deployment and the platform ready, in this case, mainly speaking about WVD on today's webinar, you can have users log in, and just the part of Windows that matters, their user profile and their policies, everything that made that machine specific to them, including the applications that they used. If you're using our FlexApp layering, we'll speak about in a moment, we'll follow that user into the environment and make them immediately productive. So when you use the solution, it also serves as a great desktop disaster recovery play as well, because everything that's important to the user will follow the user, including user authored data. We'll make sure folder redirection is in place, and we'll even automate the migration of any files that you may have had in legacy files and folders if you move to a new on-prem location, or ideally straight to Microsoft Azure in the case of WVD.
We've had a couple questions that have come in. Do you mind if I ask a couple here?
That'd be great.
So one of the biggest challenges, with managing large-scale VDI are non-persistent desktops. Could you maybe talk about, can you handle those? How easy or hard is that using ProfileUnity?
That's a great question. So ProfileUnity can be of use in a persistent desktop, which could be a physical desktop, right? Or a persistent VDI desktop, meaning the user logs back in every day. They pretty much get the same desktop. We can still help manage those users better, but where ProfileUnity can really excel and provide the most bang for your buck for ROI and lower your total cost of ownership of delivering VDI is to deliver desktops in a non-persistent fashion, which is now recognized across the industry as being the best way to deliver virtual desktops, because all you do is deliver a base image, and then you allow on something as robust as the ProfileUnity's user environment management to bring in the full user profile, the policies, things that they've set up in the environment, also to append anything that you may need unique for that environment, which may require some registry key rollout through ProfileUnity to context-aware filters, mapping drives and printers, all the things that matter to give the user a persistent user experience, even in a non-persistent desktop like Microsoft WVD. And I have to say that, Microsoft did acquire a tool known as FSLogix that does a great job bringing back in a profile, and we are proven to work with it already with ProfileUnity user environment management. So with ProfileUnity and FSLogix, you'd get the best of both worlds. You would get a profile that comes in very quickly with the FSLogix VHT that is attached and brings in the profile holistically. And then ProfileUnity can allow you to granularly manage that profile. And also the profile will work across Windows 7 and 10 and multiple versions of Windows 10 if it gets changed by Microsoft, and also work with server-side versions, Server 2012, 2016, where now we go back to Windows migrations. We're not really migrating the user, we're ending the migration cycle, because we make for a dynamic user profile that will work across all environments. So it works very cohesively across the board with solutions that Microsoft WVD already provides.
Great. We got another question here from Wayne. Could you maybe talk about logon times? That's a common complaint that Wayne's organization have. It's very slow. Can ProfileUnity help with that?
Yes. So in the previous screen from Stratusphere, you'll see that and to address the question there, we showed that on one of the first screens, login delay. We can show exactly what the delay is for Stratusphere. So you can start to measure that, and we can do a login analysis. We'll literally break down every part of your login in your existing Windows deployment and see exactly where the bottlenecks are occurring. Stratusphere is a great diagnostic solution to be able to provide that. ProfileUnity can kick in and help you greatly streamline the overall login process, because today your organization is most likely relying on scripting to provide a great user experience, as are to map drives or policies or things like that. Or you're using group policy preferences, or you're using both likely. You also might be using another one-off tool from another vendor to provide policy management. But when you have, and then the fourth bit is you're actually probably using a tool, maybe as simple as roaming profiles or another profile tool. When you couple those together, you have more than 4 different ways that I mentioned. ProfileUnity replaces all those. Your overall login time will likely very much go down with ProfileUnity. We're very efficient in the way we handle the profile. Comes back as a compressed profile across the network. That's one way. We can get very granular with the profile. It can go across Windows 7 and 10. We also do only a delta differential when we bring back the profile. So we're only replacing the files that have changed between that on persistent desktops. And where our policy management is very, very efficient when you compare it to group policy preferences alone. Just because we have very efficient Active Directory lookups, where we'll do one master Active Directory lookup and apply all policies. Whereas Active Directory will do, with group policy preferences, we'll do a lookup, and then for the next group policy preference, another lookup, and then another lookup. So overall, your logins become more efficient. Our customers today, where they see the splash screen run at login for ProfileUnity to customize that machine at login for any type of Windows delivery, their logins would be a matter of seconds usually. 30 seconds is a good login. 1 minute is not a bad login, even if you're doing a lot of things. But a lot of our customers will see a big drop in overall login times when they use ProfileUnity and also use Stratusphere to help you diagnose where your login delays are occurring in the first place.
That's great. And, we're going to do one more question on this section. And please, everybody who's in the audience, feel free to ask us questions as we go along. So this next question comes from Chang. It said, could you talk about applications right management, privilege elevation? How do we really ensure that we're guaranteeing that users get access only to what they're supposed to?
Yeah, great question. So we have features in ProfileUnity that go beyond other tools that you might have. We have built-in application restrictions. That is, if you don't want to layer an application, you can actually put it in the base image and then restrict it. And that's done in a very secure fashion to where only certain groups or context-aware filters, when they ring true, only certain groups can run the application. And then privilege elevation too. So privilege elevation is leaving users standard users, so you leave them the most secure environment that you can. And then if they need elevated rights for an application, we can actually raise the privilege elevation for a specific user on the specific application for a context-aware group. Maybe that's the accounting department needs to run an app that needs privilege elevation for one application. Outside of that, they won't be able to have admin rights across the board, which leaves your environment very secure.
That's awesome. Great questions, everybody. Please keep them coming. Let's go ahead and move on to our third section. Talk a little bit about how we operate Windows Virtual Desktop in Azure. Now, we've gone ahead and we've done our evaluation. We've gone and we've moved our virtual machines and desktops up to the cloud. Now we need to go and monitor it. Now, if you use a lot of the built-in Azure monitoring functionality, that's really monitoring the infrastructure. We need to go deeper. We need to get better insight into the performance of the users and the applications. And that's going to be critical as you want to go and scale and optimize this and reduce your overall cost. So Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about FlexApp?
Right, so FlexApp is where the rubber meets the road when you're in production. We spoke about when you go into production with Stratusphere earlier, it can help you ensure that user experience across the board. FlexApp can be used in the production mode as well for delivering an application. So great way to deliver virtual desktops. In this case, today we're speaking about the Windows virtual desktops, is to leave your base images as vanilla as possible, right? To where they will work across the most common or the lowest common denominator for your users across the board. Just providing the Windows OS, great connection to all the resources that you need, and maybe a few applications that people have in common. Maybe that's Microsoft Office and a few things across the board. Delivering applications on top of that, if you need to do that in a virtual desktop environment, you would have to open that base image back up, install another application, open the base image back up to patch that application, multiply that times the dozens and dozens of applications that any enterprise needs, and you end up with tedious base image management, production time that's lost for users, or administrators that have to work over the weekend to be able to bring applications in that are delivered within the base image. Layering is a technology that was designed to avoid all that. So FlexApp layers are elastic applications that can be attached to a base image and to bring in an application to follow users from desktop to desktop, even across Windows 7 to 10 or any other desktop. Package them once and they'll follow the user. You package them, they largely will be on a VHD container on the network, in this case also on Azure, and we're supporting that on Azure without even an SMB in place. So native support on Azure Blob Storage, for example. And then a filter driver, a pair of filter drivers actually make the application work and act as if it were natively installed in that environment. Now, older technologies are still in place and being used successfully to identify and deliver applications in a similar way. Microsoft AppV, still around. VMware has a product called ThinApp, for example, but layering is a new generation. Applications look very native. They're not in a container where they're so tightly in a bubble. The filter driver technology makes the applications act and react with other applications. So you have a very high degree of compatibility to be able to have that goal of streamlining your application delivery while you're able to package and deliver applications very quickly with FlexApp and be able to do that flexibly across any type of Windows delivery method, including OS version. So the bit level must match 32 or 64 for the operating system. But once an application is packaged, it will work across Windows 7, all versions of 10, and all versions of Server almost all the time. If the application supports it, the application can be layered with FlexApp and packaged only one time.
So I have a question around the packaging. You know, whenever I go and do application sequencing, it's kind of painful. It takes a long time. Can you maybe talk about how the fast packaging works a little bit, how that actually does save time?
Right. So it's a very streamlined process. You basically have a non-persistent virtual machine. Could be something as simple as a machine based on Hyper-V or VMware Workstation built to where it looks very closely like the environment you're about to layer it into. So with Microsoft, that might be a Windows 10 desktop. So you want to use the same build of the OS so it most closely matches it, even though applications will generally go across mixed OS versions. And then you literally start the process. Everything is automated from that point on. Basically, it will kick off the provisioning of a VHD that will be hosted either on-prem on a network file share or natively on an Azure Blob Storage without an SMB. And then the application starts installing. It's exactly, Simon, like installing an application on a Windows desktop. Therefore, anyone can be a package administrator for FlexApp. You literally launch the application, you click next every time you're prompted by the application, and then finish. And then you can immediately test the application to ensure that it worked and layered appropriately. And then it communicates with the ProfileUnity and FlexApp management console, and you can assign that application to a context-aware filter. And Robert's going to show some of this in a minute through the screenshots that he has about how you do that with a filter. And then one group can get one set of applications while another set is delivered to another set based on our context-aware filter. So the process very streamlined and straightforward. And the reason why we call it fast packaging is because the packages, FlexApp can package an application in almost the exact same time as it takes to install the application natively in any standard Windows OS.
That's awesome. So, I mean, what I really like about, Liquidware here, right, is you have this suite of end-to-end solutions, you're doing the monitoring, and you're really broken all the problems down across VDI, and you're really trying to specifically address each and every one, even when it comes to application packaging, which is great. I think we do want to take a look at a couple of screenshots here. So, Robert, why don't you kind of take us through what we're looking at here?
Sure. We're going to talk a little bit about what WVD really looks like. We've been talking a lot about it. As previously mentioned, it is currently still in private preview. It's expected to go public preview March 1st, so put that on your calendars. But what you actually see in Azure when you're provisioning these things. So when you're actually provisioning a WVD instance, you do have to go through a sizing activity. With Azure, it's a very generic sizing activity. How many users, what type of workload, if it's low, medium, high. that is not always appropriate for users, and that's where UX would really come in play, where we can essentially come with a proper assessment so we can properly size these WVD or ERS instances or multi-sensor instances. So this is actually what a sizing screen looks like with WVD. As you can imagine, you can also put it on its own resource group. You can also have availability options, so you can do an availability set, so have multiple WVD instances to take over. So there are, again, these are traditional IS functions you can do, but again, these are specific to WVD. I'm just going to move to the next screenshot. Again, that you will have wizards when you're in Azure to build out your WVD instances. When you initially are doing it, when you go into public preview next month, you'll actually see it'll say public preview on the right here. But when you're in actually a production environment, you're actually going to be using something called provision host pool, and this is where you're actually provisioning scales of instances. So say 1, 2, 5, as many as you need, depending on the needs of your environment. So if you want to move on to the next slide, Simon. So we have profile. This is a screenshot. Now it looks like a traditional screenshot of our ProfileUnity product, but what you want to understand is this is actually ProfileUnity running on Azure completely. We have actually also with a FlexApp layer, with FlexApp running there also. If you hit the next screenshot, Simon. And if you notice what we did here is on our ProfileUnity instance, I actually built a filter and I added a certain amount of applications that will be allowed in certain personas. If you go to the next screenshot, and you'll notice I have different personas here, human resources, there's an accounting team persona, filter. Now, if we go to the next screenshot, you'll see how this plays in. Actually, go one more over, and then we'll flip back to this. One more, Simon. Yep, that one. So what happens is, oh, back one, yep, there you go, is that because I've added those different personas or the different layers, I can be in the same WVD instance, but I can actually have different applications depending on my persona. If I'm an accounting person, I have these suite of applications, but if I'm a HR person, I have these suite of applications, and this is now a non-persistent desktop. That's the great part of it, best part of this whole thing. Now, if you go back one slide, Simon, should have reordered these. This is a completely isolated, completely WVD environment with ProfileUnity, our packager, workstation, etc. What's nice is that you can build this out all in one, resource group for costing purposes, or you can essentially build out your WVD on different resource groups and build VNet to VNets, and then have one primary ProfileUnity, we'll say, resource group that's managing all your WVD instances. So, I mean, again, there's a lot of flexibility there, but I wanted to show you that screenshot. That's actually a full-blown WVD running with FlexApp, running with ProfileUnity, etc. Actually acting with Azure AD.
Right. The neat, cool thing here, Robert, is every moving component is being hosted in Azure here, and there's nothing on-prem. So we'll talk about this when we recap our architecture a little bit later, but everything is running in Azure here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is not just because, and not just even the the FlexApp layers are running in Azure. And you got to realize we are agnostic. We can run in other platforms also, but in this instance, we're running in Azure. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jason, because we have a demo coming up.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to show you what it looks like from the end user perspective when a user is managed with ProfileUnity and FlexApp. The user here is in Windows 7 today, and you'll see how the user can also experience Windows 10 in short order. But he has a desktop wallpaper, and in this case, he's specifying it for himself, but it's also a corporately defined wallpaper, and you can do that at any point. I think the video stopped, so there you go. So the user also has some persistency on that desktop, and the other things that he can do is create bookmarks to where they will follow him and they become part of his user profile. Now, this is easy enough to do, right, on a Windows physical desktop or persistent desktop, but you have to keep in mind when you go to a virtual type of a desktop that you're dealing with non
persistent desktops that are basically reset every day and have no persona on them. So to have a great user experience across the board, you need to retain that. So we've added a bookmark in the previous application, and now we're going to open up Foxit Reader. Now the cool thing is Foxit Reader that we just opened up is a layered application. It's not in the base image, but as you see, the performance on it was great as we opened it up, and we turned off a spell checker in there. And that's going to be part of the user profile. We've opened up our Outlook here, and Outlook has over 25,000, actually 132,000 messages in it. About 25,000 of them are cached for the month. And the search indexing here is actually already completed. Now this user is in a Windows 7 virtual desktop. What's important is it's a non-persistent virtual desktop, and we're keeping all of this in track with our profile disk, but it could just as well be FSLogic's profile disk in WVD, and then also managed with ProfileUnity's portability settings. OneDrive has over 4 gigabytes of data in it, and those that's also cached to a VHD in here through ProfileUnity. You could likewise set up a container with FSLogix to do that, which is built into WVD going forward. Now, as the user logs off, here's where a lot of the magic will happen that is very specific to ProfileUnity and to the way that we manage the profile. We are backing up any changes saved in the Windows 7 environment right there, and the user logs off. This user also has access to a Windows 10 desktop that's a virtual desktop. And you'll see that they're logging into this Windows 10 desktop. This virtual desktop, they've logged into Windows 10 before, but this one's a non-persistent machine that they've never logged into before. And they're logging in right now. And the ProfileUnity splash screen will run. And this is some answer to the login times that we provide. We're bringing back the entire user profile. We're bringing back access to cache data for the email. We're bringing back, and we're going to assign FlexApp to login. So you're seeing an actual user login, and we are customizing this Windows 10 desktop so the user can be very productive. So this can be used to migrate people from one desktop platform to another, such as some other VDI brand to WVD, or also even a physical desktop environment. You'll see that the entire desktop, everything that mattered to the user, just came back. The corporate wallpaper was assigned. FlexApp applications are on the desktop. We're going to open up Foxit PDF Reader again. And that's a layered application that followed it was packaged once, yet it works across Windows 7 and 10. And the spell check option in there was kept in the user profile and their portability. It came across Windows 7 to 10, and that's unique to ProfileUnity through our portability settings. And then we'll open up Internet Explorer, and we'll see that even the bookmark that we put in, which was the Liquidware website, is in Internet Explorer. And now that they're in Internet Explorer, you could also open up Edge, and Edge will ask you if you want to import the bookmarks from Internet Explorer, because Edge is even more pertinent on Windows 10 now. So one other thing that we'll test in here that we can do while working in conjunction with the FSLogix technology is we're also brought the profile back in its entirety for the Windows OS itself. So you'll see that the profile cache came in using profile disk from ProfileUnity, which works across all clouds, all desktops, all delivery platforms. And the search index has actually followed the user because he had been in a Windows 10 environment before, but not on this specific machine. All the emails there have apparently come back, as well as the approximately 25,000 cached. 4 gigabytes of data from OneDrive are already in this non-persistent desktop, and you'll see that the search index has also already occurred. So the user experience very seamless across from Windows 7 to 10. You'll notice that the user actually didn't have to do anything to migrate. They were a well-managed user. We've ended the migration cycle with this. So you can use ProfileUnity in your current Windows desktop environment to be ready no matter what desktop platform you move to in the future, including WVD or others. And you can use it and have it in place in case you have an OS change pending. So for example, Windows WVD actually gives you options for Windows 7 and for 10. And we will take you and connect you through those disparate environments through our ProfileUnity portability technology. So that was a demonstration of not only FlexApp, but also of full user environment management from ProfileUnity.
Thanks, that was awesome. You guys covered a lot of information there. So as we kind of start to wrap up here, and again, we want to encourage the audience to ask any questions that they have. Could you maybe touch on this overall architecture? You know, we brought together a couple different solutions. How does this all fit in?
It's great. It's a great way to recap. So you already, if you have a Windows Enterprise, you already have every moving part you need to roll out our solution. The management console that ProfileUnity runs from, Robert showed a screenshot of that today where you manage ProfileUnity, is this blue block over to the far left, cloud-hosted Windows server. That could also be on-prem. And that could run, as I said, on-prem or in Azure, as it was in Robert's environment. That can be any Windows server, so it doesn't have to be a dedicated resource. You likely already have one today. The desktops could be any type of Windows desktops, physical, VDI, or remote desktop, doesn't matter. So in this case, we talked about Windows WVD today. Windows is Windows to ProfileUnity and FlexApp, so it will manage and deliver applications across any type. The other storage points that are in the cloud are the ones that are pointing to Microsoft Azure, and that is a storage point to host the configuration file for ProfileUnity and the needed agent and everything that's hosted on the network, and filter drivers that can be cached to the endpoint or installed to the endpoint. The object-based storage in Azure can be used to host portability, which is those files that went between Windows 7 and 10 that made it magical for the user to remain productive across environments. And also the Flex apps can be also VHDs hosted on Azure Blob Storage, as that's already supported from us. This is something that we shipped for FlexApp in November of last year, native support for Azure, and then we had it for the profiles approximately a year ago. The cloud user storage, we fully and seamlessly support OneDrive. So if you want to reassign user authored files such as My Documents, My Pictures, and things like that, we can migrate to those areas of the OS, which OneDrive can then pick up and sync to keep everything in the cloud. Whether you're on WVD or any Windows platform, we perform similar across the board and support other clouds as well. The layered cake over to the right, as I sort of recap that, but it's any Windows delivery method. If you look at it from the bottom up, any Windows OS, ProfileUnity will run across all those without having to be reinstalled, without having to repackage applications. You leverage the same context-aware filters to ring true to assign apps or to assign unique policies to users to give you that one dynamic profile, application management through layering or whitelist and blacklist restrictions, privilege elevation, and policy management across the board. Next slide. So this really recaps our summary of solutions for a move to Microsoft WVD and supports, and as we've said many times, we support any way that Windows is delivered. Today, speaking specifically about Microsoft WVD. Whether you're transitioning to WVD, you'll see in that first column that we can harvest user profiles. We can set documents and data in play to be assigned to best practice areas. Stratusphere can come in and pick up the slack to help you evaluate user candidates, to identify those that might be ready to go, to help you size those environments. The next column is onboarding. So whether you're onboarding to WVD, ProfileUnity UEM can seamlessly bring in that user profile, as you saw in today's demonstration. We can layer applications onto Azure and keep your streamlined images indeed streamlined. And then once you're in production, we can do that ongoing management of your policies. We can roll back profiles granularly at any time. We can set ongoing policy management, context-aware filters. Maybe that's printer management in your environment, security management in your environment to disable USB for certain users, or to provide that full user environment management. And then Stratusphere UX can, of course, once you're in production, monitor the user experience, diagnose issues before they are mission critical, and you can see those trends and analysis and go as deep as you need to go to solve those, so you can continue to grow and scale your Microsoft WVD deployment and to, again, continue to prove it is the best top ever delivered to your users.
Well, that's awesome. We covered a lot of information there. On behalf of Jason, Robert, and myself, we definitely thank everybody for attending. And hopefully what you've learned here is that not only will WVD be a great solution, but there's a suite, an ecosystem, which is ready to help you support it. Liquidware has been a great partner with Microsoft. They're able to provide some amazing solutions here. So as you're starting that VDI journey, that WVD journey, make sure that you connect with Liquidware, and you'll be able to get some great tools and resources. So with that, we are at the top of the hour. We do have one more question that has come in, and if you guys have any additional questions, please feel free to ask.
Yeah,
the question
we can stay on a little longer. Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. So we have a great one here. So we touched on this term micro-isolation a couple of times. Can you kind of define really what that means and how that's used to avoid conflicts as you're using multiple layers and different applications?
Sure. So it's micro isolation is something very specific to our FlexApp application layering, and what it accomplishes is that you don't have to. It takes all the guesswork out of layering applications, basically. Usually you would think if you need two applications that need to be installed together, that need to work together, you would have to install them at the same time. That's not true with micro-isolation. Let's talk about a suite of products that is known for sharing DLLs and things of that nature. Say you wanted to layer in Adobe's Creative Suite, which includes Photoshop, Illustrator, and about 6 or 7 different other popular programs. Some of those programs, actually, if they were installed together at the same time, are aware of shared DLLs. But what if you installed or layered Photoshop and then a month later decided to layer Illustrator, and you are going to put those into the same desktop? Now, this is where something could occur, to where a conflict could occur. These applications, in this case, were not installed traditionally. They are layered into the environment, so they weren't aware of each other at the time of installing, but they are forced to work together. This is where micro-isolation kicks in. So say you do deliver Photoshop and Illustrator to the same desktop, and they share a DLL. When Photoshop launches, it launches seamlessly. Now, if micro-isolation was not in play, Illustrator could launch and look for a DLL that's in use with Photoshop. It wasn't aware that it needed to share that because it wasn't installed at the same time. So you would end up with an application that fails to load. Micro-isolation avoids needing, so to solve that, without micro-isolation, you would need to package those at the same time. It takes a lot of thinking, and what micro-isolation does automatically and seamlessly now, when micro-isolation is in play with FlexApp, is that when Illustrator starts to load and a DLL may already be in use that it needed to share, it will automatically intercept that call, point back to the VHD where the DLL was packaged, basically use a copy of the DLL, and things will happen seamlessly and automatically in the background. And the two applications will work well together, and will not, and therefore you avoid a bunch of application packaging planning scenarios that may have otherwise took you weeks or months to figure out which applications you needed to package together, or which applications may need to be packaged in the same layer, and things of that nature. It really automates the guesswork of packaging.
That's excellent. Well, that's the questions that we currently have, but if more questions come up, please, of course, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to any of your presenters directly or contact sales@liquidware.com. And we're also offering 25 free licenses. So this will give you an opportunity to explore these products And really what we hope that you'll get out of this is beyond the monitoring and diagnosis, you're also going to get a great suite of tools for that entire workspace life cycle, from inventory, baselining, onboarding, and validation. So please, let's get in touch, and we certainly look forward to having a conversation with you soon. On behalf of Liquidware and our other presenters, we hope you have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.